Thank you for joining me for another video. So today, setup in here is slightly different from how it has been in the past. Actually, it is entirely different where I am than it has been in all of my previous recordings. The reason is because I'm actually in the process of moving from my apartment to a house. My wife and kids and I are, we're renting a house now, and so we're kind of in the process of moving. So I'm actually standing up in my garage in front of literally a curtain that I just threw up just to provide some backdrop so that you don't see the filthy wall behind me. I am going to be cleaning up in here. I am going to be converting it into a little bit of an office area, and this is hopefully where I'm going to be filming from now on, at least, the majority of the videos and everything. But that's not what I wanted to talk about today. Today, I can officially say that we have finally finished the first chapter of Genesis. So if you've made it this far, hey, congratulations. You've already made it further than most people. Probably, I don't know. Presumably, though, most people don't really get very far in the first chapter of Genesis. They just sort of, read a few verses and they're like, this is strange. And then they just sort of, move on to whatever piques their interest after that. But since you've made it this far, thank you for sticking it out with me in the 6 or 7 episodes that have come before this. That being said, I want to jump right into the material. We're going to be starting in chapter 2 of Genesis today. So let's go ahead and jump into that. Ooh, the thunder. Sounds angry outside, the weather. It's very humid. Of course, this is Florida, so it's very angry outside right now. So if you happen to have your Bibles, not that you need it, because I'm going to tell you what it says anyway, but in the event that you do have them, go ahead and open it up to Genesis chapter 2, and we're going to go through verses 1 through 3. We're getting far into this second chapter, just like we did on chapter 1. Yeah. So, as has become my custom, I'm going to read the Hebrew first, then I'm going to read the English, or then I'm going to, I guess I should say, translate the English, rather than read the English, because copyright issues. Unless I want to read the King James Version, but why would I do that? Because it destroys the beauty of the Hebrew language. Now, that being said, we're going to jump back into the text here. So Genesis chapter 2, verses 1 through 3, and I'm just going to read all 3 verses, then translate them. So it says, وَيَخُلُّ هَشَمَيْمُ وَعَارِسْ وَخَسَوَامْ وَيَخَلِّ إِلَوْهِمْ بَيُّمْ هَشِّبَعِي ملختو أشر عصا ويشبث بيوم هالشبعي من كل ملختو أشر عصا ويبرخ إلهيم إث يوم هالشبعي ويقدش أثو كيفو شبث من كل ملختو أشر برا إلهيم العصوث. That is just so that we're all on the same page here. That is going to be probably one of the most familiar passages to every Jew out there. And we'll get into why that is in just a second. So it tells us that the heavens and the earth were finished in all their armies. So the word savam is their armies. So this version translates it as in all their array. Basically, it just means that all of their hosts, all of their, everything that goes with them, that was finished by this point, by the point that chapter 2 begins. And it says, and by the 7th day, or on the 7th day, God completed his work which he had done, and he ceased, he stopped, he abstained, he rested, most translations will say, on the 7th day from all of his work that he had done. And God blessed the 7th day, and he sanctified it, because on it he ceased, he abstained, he rested from his work from his work which God created to make. It doesn't really make very good sense in English, but that's what it means. Basically, the gist of it all goes like this. By the seventh day, God was finished with his creative work. Wow, it's kind of loud outside right now. It's the weather. I don't know if you can hear it over this, but it's kind of loud. It's a little bit scary, man. But so as I was saying earlier, this passage is going to be very familiar to Jews, and the reason for that is because, well, observant Jews anyway. If you're just a secular Jew, not that there's anything, just a secular Jew, not that there's anything necessarily inherently wrong with not being, excessively religious. Just that most American secular Jews aren't particularly familiar with this passage, but every observant Jew is. And the reason for that is because on Friday night we actually read this passage. So it's a very familiar passage. It's very, you heard how quickly it rolled off my tongue. It was very without even any thought. I can literally, say it in my sleep probably. I assume. I don't know for certain. I've never done that, but we'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll try that later. So this is part of the Kiddush. This is part of the sanctification. There we go, of the Shabbat, and it brings Genesis chapter 1 to its conclusion. Hence, everything that was written in it. So you've got all the creation during these 6 days of creation. And then on the seventh day, Hashem just sits back and he just says, he just rests, he just does, whatever it is that he decided to do on that day. I don't know what it was. Maybe he just wanted to sit back and watch. I don't know. This is at some point after humanity has been created. We're not told if this is before Adam and Eve. We're going to get into that later in this chapter. Because we're only going to the third verse today. So we're not going to get too deep into, actually, I don't think we're going to get into Adam and Eve at all today. But, this may be before Adam and Eve. It may not be. I don't know. Honestly, it doesn't matter that much either. And I'm consulting my notes because, in fact, it'd be a whole lot easier if I happened to have my glasses handy. Because there is a lot that I wanted to cover today. So we'll go there. So, as I was saying, these first three verses of chapter 2, it concludes the creation narrative of chapter 1, which tells us two things. It tells us, A, it really actually doesn't belong in chapter 2. Okay. So, as a friend of mine, a Christian buddy of mine once said to me, the chapters and verse numbers, that wasn't inspired. I couldn't agree more. This is a perfect example. It's not like when God gave the Torah, he said, okay, here's how I want you to divide it up, chapter and verse. Okay. It was actually a Christian invention. It's one of the few innovations in Judaism that we can attribute to Christians. And the reason for that is because they just wanted to quote it a little bit easier. They wanted to be able to reference different passages a lot easier than just saying, hey, that one verse where it says, X, Y, Z. So that's how that went. So it's one of the few innovations that Christians gave us in Judaism, and we just really sort of adopted it and just sort of ran with it, and that's fine. It's fine. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. I don't, necessarily believe that, it's bad to adopt, customs like that. Now, I will tell you the Jewish and Christian versing is slightly different. I use the Jewish verse numbers and everything, and I think that there are obvious reasons behind that. But if you happen to be a Christian and you happen to be reading in a Christian Bible, or if you happen to not be a Christian but reading along in a Christian Bible, it's not going to be hard for you to follow along with me. Usually, we're going to go verse by verse by verse. But in some cases, let's say in the event that we don't, for whatever reason, the verse that I'm going to be reading from is usually, right around the same verse number in the Christian versions. Usually it's going to be only like a verse or two off. I think, so I was actually teaching a group of Christians almost a decade ago about, a specific prophecy. I believe it was in the book of Malachi. Malachi in English, and I said, turn to, I don't remember the exact verse number, so I'm just gonna, say it, like this, and then you can, look it up later if you want. But basically, I just said, go ahead and turn to chapter 3, verse 15 or something like that, and this is what it says. And everyone in the room was just like, they were legitimately flabbergasted. They're like, wait, what? What? Why is that not in my Bible? Well, because the Christian version actually breaks that up into a fourth chapter. So, whereas there are only 3 in the Jewish version of it. So very interesting bit of confusion there. So that was fun. Now, getting back to the topic at hand. So in verse 2, I want you to take note of the fact that the Torah says that God finished his work of creating on the 7th day. Okay, what's implied? Well, the implication here is that God indeed worked on Shabbat. He did not. Okay, in Judaism we understand it to be that he didn't necessarily work on Shabbat, unless you're going to say, yes, he created Shabbat on Shabbat, because of course he did, right? But he finished in the sense that it was already completed by the 7th day. Now the Samaritans, on the other hand, do something a little bit different. Okay, they actually. God is speaking right now. No, so they actually have, at some point in their history, they've redacted the text of the Torah. That's okay. Jews did too. We just don't readily admit it because it's really kind of hard to explain to the fundamentalist Jews out here that are like, oh, we've never changed it. Of course we changed it. Of course we altered it. Of course we had to redact it. That's why you see a reference to the city of Ramesses before Pharaoh Ramesses lived. I'm just going to leave that here, step back, and we'll discuss that eventually, I'm sure, because somebody's going to ask, I'm sure. So what the Samaritans did in their verse 2 here is, rather than saying God finished on the 7th day all his creative work, it says that he finished on the 6th day all of his creative work. Meanwhile, in Judaism, we say, yes, he finished. Tradition says he finished by the 7th day, whereas in the Samaritan tradition, keep in mind, Jews and Samaritans, we are brothers. Okay, Samaritans are the remnant of the northern kingdom that was never actually exiled from the land of Israel, the northern kingdom of Israel, the northern Israelite kingdom, if you will. Whereas Jews are descended from the Judean kingdom, the southern Israelite kingdom. So Jews and Samaritans, yes, we are brothers. There are going to be Jews out there, who are going to fight that tooth and nail. But you know what? Let's just admit the historical and biological reality that, yes, we actually are brothers. And the Samaritans are still around. There's about 1,000 of them, but they're still around to this day in Israel. and the occupied Palestinian territories, or I guess territory. They're in Kiryat Luza off of Mount Gerizim, and they're in Holon in Tel Aviv. So there are two where they live. One in the region everyone recognizes as Israel, unless you've got a political axe to grind, and one in just across in the areas that are administered by Palestinians. We're not going to get into politics. I don't like getting into politics, okay? Because I promise you that I am harsher politically than I am religiously. Religiously, I could be like, okay, so you got it wrong, you're okay. Politically, I'm just like, okay, you got it wrong, so, you should really not be alive anymore. That sort of thing. Like I don't usually say that, but that's, I have very strong political opinions, and I'm sure most people do, especially in the modern world. For example, I am strongly Zionist. Why? Because I don't particularly like the idea of Jews being murdered for being Jews, and frankly, there is only one country in the entire world where we stand a chance of that not happening, and that is Israel. But enough politics, enough, talking about it. Let's just jump right back into what we got here. Okay, so the difference here between the Samaritan and the Jewish versions, it's not really arbitrary, both of them, because every verse in the Torah comes to teach us something. There is a reason that it's written the way that it's written. There are some things that are written in a manner that is irregular. Okay, it's not normal speech. Okay, that is to teach us specific lessons. So, what is the specific lesson that we can learn here between the Samaritan and the Jewish versions of the text here? Well, honestly, there's too many possibilities that, for what it could be for me to cover in this video, and I'm just not going to. Okay, but for now, everybody agrees that Hashem, God, did not work on the seventh day. He ceased from his work on the sixth day and sort of rested on the seventh day. Okay, the Jewish side says he created Shabbat on Shabbat. Okay, everybody understands that. Not a problem there. Okay, so moving right along. That honestly is really all I've got for chapter 2. What I really wanted to do in this video, though, is to recap the previous 6 days of creation, just so that we're all sort of, caught up. For those of you who maybe you've missed an episode or two, I don't know. So let's recap very quickly. So on the Torah's day 1, which took place during the Hadean and Archean aeons, God created light. Right? Now, this light may have actually just been a byproduct of the Big Bang moment, that instant where there was a release of very, very intense pressure and matter just sort of shot everywhere. Okay, that is a distinct possibility, and that, as it happens, that's what I believe, because we know that the sun was not actually around at that point in time. So that's kind of an interesting thing. The sun wouldn't form until later on, after the Big Bang, obviously, but still within that first day of creation. Okay, so what's it like? This big sudden expansion, this big explosion. So what's it like? Well, it's like a manna shrimp. Okay, the manna shrimp is this really cool animal. It's not kosher, so don't eat it. But really cool animal, lives in the ocean. Hence shrimp. It is a shrimp. Okay, if you're Australian, we're talking prawns here. Okay, or English, or basically pretty much anywhere but the United States that speaks English. We're talking prawns here. Okay, the mantis shrimp, very cool species of shrimp. It is built like Mike Tyson. Not making that up. Google it. Okay, these guys have like boxers' fists like all the time. Okay, they hit things. with their fists. They do. It's the coolest thing too, because you can hear it. Usually, you're like, oh, he's just gonna kind of tap the glass. No, so some people, keep manna shrimps as pets, and they have a problem with the manna shrimp actually breaking the aquarium by punching the glass. So, and rightfully so, because the energy produced by the punch of a manna shrimp is enough to very literally cause a spark underwater that has enough power and enough heat behind it that it literally separates the oxygen and hydrogen molecules in the water. Okay, so if you've never seen video footage of a manna shrimp punching something, watch it. It literally forms its own air bubble. It creates air out of water. How cool is that, right? I mean, how awesome is God's creation? I mean, it's just got to be like one of the coolest animals out there. And that, we're not even talking about the platypus, which is poisonous and it's a mammal and it lays eggs and it's for some reason got, a beaver's body and a duck's mouth, and I'm not even going to get into the other oddities about it because, I mean, platypus, right? I mean, just the name, come on, man. But we are actually going to, kind of briefly hint at them in just a bit. Not outright, but so yeah, very cool animal. This period in Earth's history, though, it's very rainy. I don't know if you can hear it. This period in Earth's history is marked by heavy bombardment from various different celestial objects and by extreme volcanism. Okay, lots of chaos going on planet Earth, right? So on day 2, which took place during the Proterozoic Aeon, okay, God created the life-supporting atmosphere that most of us enjoy today. Okay, some of us may not like it, and that's fine. No judgment, unless politics. But I'm kidding. Now, this was the time when microscopic life first became a thing on Earth, at least according to the fossil record. Okay, they also had a hand in the formation of the oxygen-rich atmosphere when they evolved the ability to turn atmospheric carbon into oxygen. Right, that is chlorophyll-based. What's the word? Photosynthesis. Right, it's a process that's still going on today. Right, this is how plants and certain bacteria, particularly cyanobacteria, this is how they, keep doing things today. It's turning atmospheric carbon into oxygen, right? Caused the Great Oxygenation Event, which literally slaughtered, 95% or something like that of all life before it. All life before it was microbial, so it doesn't really matter, but that's not important right now. We're not going to get into that. Okay, so on day 3, the Taurus day 3, which took place during the Paleozoic era, God created the first major land masses in the midst of a global ocean, right? And he caused fungal and plant life to begin to grow on land. So this would actually forever transform the Earth from being really just sort of a desert planet to being one with the rich biomes that we see today, right? Amazon rainforest, all the rainforests, actually, all the forests, all the plants, even in deserts today, even savannas, all these plants are because of that day in creation, right? So day 4, moving right along, which took place during the Permian and Triassic eras, okay, the celestial bodies, sun, moon, and stars, right, planets and whatnot, became visible from Earth, okay? If anyone had been alive to see it, they'd have been able to look up in the night sky at the end of it all and be like, oh, what are these things in the sky? Let's call them stars arbitrarily, because that's the sort of thing that we do. Now, the atmospheric debris, all the cloud of whatever, dust and whatnot that was in the sky began to fall down with the rain. And so the atmosphere became translucent. People were able, not that there were people, just that if there were, they would be able to see for the first time the sun, moon, and stars. And presumably at least the planets closest to us that are visible with the naked eye. And frankly, honestly, I mean, let's think about that for just a second. Okay, that must have been absolutely amazing to have seen. Yesterday you go to sleep. The clouds all, or the sky's all cloudy. There's no light. Well, maybe a dim light. You wake up in the morning and you're like, dear God, what is that giant ball of light in the sky? When did that get there? Then you go to sleep later that night and you're like, my God, what is this? It's like the big light just got like smaller and less bright, and maybe it's a different one. Maybe, and what are all these little bitty ones? So it must have been very cool. Not that there was anyone there, again, not that there was anyone there to have enjoyed it. I would have enjoyed it. Just figured I'd throw that out there. Shout out to God, for doing cool stuff like that. Now, day 5, okay, which took place during the Mesozoic era. God created the avian animals, right? That would be like birds, pterosaurs, flying reptiles, that sort of thing. But not the flying lizards, the flying snakes that we have today. I'm not making that up. Please go look that up. There are species, they don't really fly. It's like the flying squirrel. It's not really flying, it's just sort of gliding. But they're called flying squirrels, flying lizards, flying, how do you call it, snakes, things like that. So very cool stuff. He also made small mammals that probably generally looked like rodents. He also made the Taninim, the Gedolim. Taninim Gedolim, as we talked about in a previous video, were essentially aquatic reptiles, right? Mosasaurs. By the way, I did go back and watch the newer Jurassic Park movies. Fantastic, great stuff. They're long. If you haven't seen them, they are long. Prepare to sit there for 2.5-ish hours or so on one. So they are long, but they've been making movies longer and longer and longer for the last probably decade or so. And honestly, that's getting annoying. Come on, guys, I'm not going to sit there for 3 hours and watch a single movie, okay? Give me something worth watching. Give me a story you can tell me in an hour and a half tops, and we're good. Give me a story that's good enough that I'll want to sit there for an hour and a half and be willing to pay, $15, $16, $17 just to go to the movie theater. Make better movies. Hollywood, come on, you're Jews. You can do this. I believe in you. Jews do not own Hollywood. We just happen to be, deeply involved in the film industry. And there's a reason for that I'm not going to get into today, but maybe in a later video I'll get into it. So this was also Mesozoic. The Mesozoic era was also a period called the vertebrate explosion, right? I'll let you look that up if you want more clarification on that, but basically what that means is all the animals with backbones that exist today, that's basically when they came around, right? So the 6th day on the Torah's day 6, okay? Stay with me here. On the Torah's day 6, which by the way took place during the Cenozoic era, which is the one that we happen to be living in right now, God created us. Okay, we weren't the only thing that he created that day, right? We weren't the only ones that he created at that point in history, but we happen to be the most important things to our lives that were created at that time, because we don't have a life unless we are created and stuff. I don't know, man. It's been, like I said, have I mentioned I'm moving yet? It's I've been working off of just a couple hours of sleep, so stick with me here. Try to put 2 and 2 together with me. Now this was when placental mammals and marsupials like kangaroos, opossums, that sort of thing, diversified, right? The vertebrate explosion of the previous day of creation is now sort of coming to a head in the current era, the Cenozoic. Okay, because of all the mammals that diversified during this time, it's called the Age of Mammals. But I'm not going to call it that because I frankly think that that's stupid. Okay, just call it what it is. It's the Cenozoic or day 6 of creation. Okay, either don't call it Age of Mammals. That implies that there's other ages that are going to come in the future when mammals are going to be oppressed or something. I don't know. Maybe we'll be extinct at some point. I don't know. I'm not certain what the very, very, very distant future holds. Who knows? Maybe in 5 million years or so, we'll colonize the universe. I don't know. I just, there are so many things I just don't know. And speculative future, that's one of the things I just can't know. I'm sorry. I can only interpret the data I'm given. Okay. Where was I? Oh yeah. So during this era, we've actually seen the eruption of the Toba supervolcano and the end of the last major ice age, which frankly I think is just awesome. And yes, there were people there then. In fact, I suspect that there are remnants of the memory of these Ice Age cultures that are still in modern day culture. Well, maybe not modern day cultures, but cultures in the historically recorded period, right? So we've got. Let me set that down back in the frame. So like the Maya have a story about leaving behind a very cold, very bitter world. Okay, the Navajo have a tradition about an ice world that their ancestors lived in. Okay, the Norse actually probably have the most famous, because Norse, Vikings and whatnot, they probably have the most famous legend out there about what I suspect may be a remnant of surviving the last ice age. And that is basically the freeing of Bori. Bori is the father of Bor, who is the father of Odin, okay, the chief god in the Germanic pantheon, right? He was apparently in the previous world, whatever that was. It was apparently filled with ice. He was encased in a block of ice, and he was actually freed from the ice by a cow that licked the ice. I mean, it wasn't a conscious thing. It just licked the ice for the salt content of the ice, In the story, I don't know if salt water freezes. I don't know, how that works exactly, but there's that. So I think that, perhaps stories like that may be a cultural memory that's just sort of been handed down over and over and over again and just sort of exaggerated and added to, perhaps altered a little bit from the civilizations that survived the last ice age to roughly the modern age. Okay, even Semitic peoples have stories about surviving great apocalypses, the plural of apocalypse, whatever it is. Why do I do this to myself, man? But some Semitic peoples have stories of survival of what appears to be an ice age. Okay. I would imagine that you're going to find that sort of thing in ancient cultures all over the world. Perhaps the Aboriginal peoples of Australia, perhaps the Maori of New Zealand. I don't know. I don't know enough about those cultures to be able to speak intelligibly about what they believe, what their cultural traditions are, or anything like that. But that being said, I'm done. That's all I wanted to say today. That's all I'm getting at today. Hopefully next week my backdrop will be a little bit less this and a little bit more appropriate. Hopefully, I'll have it, a little bit more of a little bit of office sort of a thing set up so I don't have to stand and give my little spiel like I am now. But if I have to, okay, so I'll do it, whatever, no big deal. It's not the end of the world. That being said, if you enjoyed this video, please like and share it. And invite your friends to come check out this channel. If you haven't yet, go ahead and hit the subscribe button and turn the notifications for this channel on so that every time I post a video, you get notified, hey, Judah just decided that he wanted to, throw another video up. You might want to go check it out. You might not, that's cool. I don't know that YouTube does that. I don't, I assume that they probably don't say, yeah, it's up to you, whatever, man. But yeah. Also, go ahead and head over to Facebook if you haven't already and search for an unorthodox Jew. Should be me. Go ahead and hit the like button and or follow button, whatever the case may be. And like and or follow me. I'd like to get some more content on the social media page, but again, moving. It's been kind of chaotic lately. So anyway, that being said, until next time, shalom.